In 2012, the states of New Mexico and Arizona celebrated 100 years of statehood. As part of the festivities leading up to the centennial, the Union Pacific Railroad dispatched the Centennial Special, treating selected guests to a once-in-a-lifetime ride on a passenger train pulled by the ever-impressive steam locomotive number 844. UP's famous Northern traveled nearly 3,000 miles on an excursion honoring the rich railroad heritage of the Southwest. On October 29, 2011, the Special departed Cheyenne, Wyoming, and headed southwest to El Paso, Texas. It then traveled west into West Colton, California, and northward through Salt Lake City and Ogden, Utah. Finally, the train headed east, working its way back home to Cheyenne. Our program features the southern portion of the route, from Alamogordo, New Mexico to Las Vegas, Nevada. On November 6th, a large crowd was on hand in Alamogordo to see number 844 up close. An adjacent park offered steam rides on a slightly smaller scale to the next generation of rail fans. A reenactment of a 19th century train robbery gave the crowds a taste of the old Southwest. A quick peek inside the cab of the 844 shows the tools of the trade the engineer and fireman work with to keep things rolling. On the morning of departure from Alamogordo, the Special basks in the morning sun near an old water tank. Heritage Unit number 1996, painted in colors reminiscent of the Southern Pacific, will provide extra horsepower and dynamic braking to the consist as needed. Running slightly behind schedule, the 844 strides out of Alamogordo for the relatively easy jaunt to El Paso. New Mexico was admitted to the Union in January 1912, becoming the 47th state. With a population of nearly 2 million people, New Mexico is the fifth largest state in the nation, encompassing 123,593 square miles. It was named by the Spanish when it became a province of Mexico in 1598. At Oro Grande, 844 will hold the main, while meeting an auto train coming the other way. Although no formal stop was scheduled here, the crew decided to take advantage of the delay by doing some routine servicing of the 484. Just south of Newman, we're officially in the state of Texas as the Big Alco rolls along. It's almost noon, and the 8-car special is seen backing into position for tomorrow's display. The occasional geyser of steam in front of the cab is from the Wilson blowdown separator. The boiler must be blown down occasionally to purge the sludge that accumulates in the very bottom of the boiler, called the mud ring. When the engineer or the fireman activates the mud ring blowdown, saturated steam blows out of the top in front of the cab, while the separated sludge and water fall out a drain below the engineer's window. The engineer can see how bad the sludge is, and he can continue blowing down as necessary until the discharge runs clear. The southwestern water contained a high mineral content, and this explains the frequent blowdowns seen on this strip. Steam locomotive boilers are sensitive to contaminants, and as the saying goes, if you wouldn't drink it, don't put it in a locomotive. As the 844 is tied down for the night, the crew wastes no time. Looking like a huge erector set, this portable stairway for viewing the cab is set up on the spot. Later that afternoon, we're trying to stake out some potential photo locations for the 844's departure. Just west of town on the Texas-New Mexico border, both main lines on the Sunset route cross a river on separate trestles. We waited for UP to send something our way and got more than we expected. Two westbounds cross side by side as we stand in the right place at the right time. We settled on a location near Sunland Park, New Mexico, as the 844 pulls the special to Lordsburg, where it will spend the night. The train skirts the border with Mexico at this location. We can see one of Mexico's many neighborhoods in the background. Before it arrives in Lordsburg, the special will make 30-minute stops in Santa Teresa and Deming to service the locomotive and to celebrate New Mexico's 100th year as a state. We set up at Cambrai on the Highway 549 bridge as the last steam locomotive delivered to the Union Pacific and the only one never officially retired approaches our camera. After the service stop at Deming, we catch 844 as she heads out of town. We caught the special on the old highway as it came into Lordsburg. Let's enjoy a little pacing as the big Alco struts her stuff. The special will spend one night here and depart at 8 in the morning. While this was not one of the formal display stops, locals were welcome to admire UP's living legend while the train awaits tomorrow's departure for Tucson, Arizona. The 80-inch drivers are always a sight to behold, even when the locomotive is at rest. The early morning sun illuminates the train, which will be on the move again in about an hour. Right at departure time, an eastbound ZL-AMQ blasts by and reveals the 844 under a full head of steam on this crisp morning. The train passes Steins Mountain. This is also where we cross from New Mexico into Arizona. Three stops will be made on the way to Tucson, 1/2 hour each at Wilcox and Benson, and a 15-minute stop at Vail. At Wilcox, it looks as though the entire town has come to greet the train. A chopper covers the historical event from a bird's-eye perspective. The special arrives in Benson, where horrendous traffic jams made it impossible for us to get near the train while it was on display. We're set up near Mescal as the special continues west. In a few minutes, the special will arrive in the yard at Tucson. Tucson is Arizona's second largest city, with a population of just over 500,000 people. In February of 1912, Arizona became the 48th state admitted to the Union. With nearly 114,000 square miles, the state's biggest claim to fame is the massive Grand Canyon. On the morning of November 11th, we view the train on display as visitors begin to arrive. The clouds will be with us all the way to Phoenix, our next destination. Seen from the top of a parking garage, the 844 leaves the yard for a short journey into downtown Tucson, where festivities are being held at the old depot. Departing Tucson, the train is moving slowly as it follows a westbound freight out of town. Crowds begin to gather as the train arrives in Picacho. Here, the Y takes the special onto another track. A different main line will be required to get the train into Arizona's capital. A switching move was made so that the 1996 and the auxiliary tender will be on the rear of the train. The 844 will remain on the west end of the train as it makes its way into Phoenix. Because Phoenix lacks turning facilities, the special will have to come back to Picacho with the 1996 on the point. After the 1996 has moved onto the west leg of the Y, the 844 backs down onto the train. With Picacho Peak standing guard, we watch the special from a different angle. It's moving forward to allow the 1996 to couple onto the rear. An eastbound stack train approaches. Union Pacific was doing plenty of track work in the area at the time of our visit. The engineer lays on the horn constantly to warn the workers of the approaching train. With Picacho Peak looming in the distance, the Special proceeds west towards its next display and servicing stop in the town of Coolidge. At the Central Avenue crossing, locals have turned out to greet the train and admire the sights and sounds that only a steam engine can provide. The UP Steam Team is kept busy lubricating the bearings of the main rods with an air-powered grease gun as the curious spectators look on. With maintenance complete and everyone back on board, the Special slowly accelerates out of town. The next stops will be in the towns of Gilbert and Tempe. In Phoenix, the train is about a mile away from its destination. The late afternoon sun manages to peek through the clouds as the 844 rolls along at about 20 miles per hour, giving everyone a chance to see this rolling history in action. An overnight rainstorm has left the ground on the muddy side, but it hasn't dampened the spirits of those who wanted to see this steam-powered war baby on display. Phoenix is the only city on the tour that featured the special on display for 2 full days. Despite the weather, turnout is brisk as families come to be part of the event and wait patiently in line for a chance to peek inside the 844's cab. With the train tied up for a couple of days, we made a side trip to catch some honorary steam locomotives on the Apache Railway. Here we catch the Apache's veteran Alcos arriving in Holbrook, Arizona, with the cut of cars to be interchanged with the BNSF. With only 2 cars to take back to the Apache yard near Snowflake, these classic diesels will have an easy time of it. But when the engineer opens the throttle a few notches, the train disappears in a cloud of smoke that would make the 844 jealous. Alco fans call it turbocharger lag. We call it impressive. The Phoenix skyline is in the background as we set up on a hill overlooking a classic 9-span truss bridge crossing a river in the city of Tempe. It's partially obscured by a newer bridge carrying a light rail line that serves the Phoenix area. Here, a trolley crosses the river as the Centennial Special, with the 1996 leading, slowly crosses the former Southern Pacific Bridge. The slow speed gives residents a last chance to witness the 844's first visit to the Phoenix area. During the train's stay in Phoenix, 7 additional passenger cars were added, nearly doubling the train's length. These cars will stay on the special until its arrival in West Colton. There they will be removed and then eventually head to Salt Lake City on another train. Here's an interesting sight: a truly modern light rail vehicle alongside a truly classic steam locomotive. Just before the train comes back to the town of Coolidge, this time for a 90-minute stop, we view the 844 crossing another classic 9-span truss bridge over a dry river. It's a fantastic run-by. In downtown Coolidge, the 844 has uncoupled from the train while the steam team performs maintenance. The tender is topped off by running a hose to a nearby fire hydrant. Running low on water is a steam crew's nightmare. Therefore, the location of each hydrant along the route is carefully mapped out before every trip with a steam locomotive. Maintenance complete, the 844 couples back onto its train. In the rich farmland east of La Palma, the Centennial Special makes its way back to the Y, where the 1996 and the auxiliary tender will return to the front of the train, behind the 844. After the power has been reassembled, the Special backs onto the east leg of the Y. We're not exactly sure which is older, the steam engine or the cantilever signal bridge. Either way, it makes an interesting sight more than a decade into the 21st century. As the crew waits for a clear signal, the 844 enjoys a brief restful moment. It will soon be given its toughest workout on this trip with a heavy train in tow. It's a good thing that fellow ducked, or the photographers assembled at this shot might have had some impolite things to say. The Special stopped at Casa Grande for about 20 minutes, and we caught it headed west out of town. At Gila Bend, the 844 is stopped again for service, and it seems as though half the town has come out to watch. Although it's long been out of service, the surviving water tank looks perfectly appropriate next to the steamer. It's doubtful that anyone in the crowd younger than 30 would remember the last time a steam engine came to town. The year was 1984, and another northern, former Southern Pacific number 4449 came through on its way to and from the World's Fair in New Orleans in May and June of that year. With servicing complete, the Centennial Special is ready to highball out of town. Memories are being made everywhere the train goes. Even those who can't be there in person are soon treated to images and videos uploaded to the internet. With the sun setting behind the distant mountains in Aztec, we wait for the special to pass by another surviving water tank. As darkness falls across the desert, we push the limits of our camera to get these shots of 844 cruising through Mohawk. At Culfred, we cut our last run-by for the day. The train will make one more servicing stop at Welton before the 15-car train ties up in Yuma for 2 nights. On November 16th, the Centennial Special was on display at the yard in Yuma. This would be the train's last stop in the state of Arizona. This old Southern Pacific steamer is on slightly more permanent display. And just a stone's throw from the steamer is the Yuma Valley Railroad. The next morning, the Big 484 is leaving Yuma on time, and we begin the day's coverage just west of Winter Haven, California. The low morning sun provides perfect illumination. Nyland is the first scheduled stop for this high-maintenance machine. The 844 traveled 70 miles from Yuma and has another 140 miles to go before reaching West Colton. This is also the junction with the 41-mile Calexico subdivision that goes to the Mexican border. We notice the alkaline buildup on the boiler just ahead of the cab, remnants of the frequent blowdowns necessary to purge the boiler of impurities. The Big Northern hasn't had time for a bath since leaving Cheyenne, but it's a reminder of the bygone steam era, when working engines couldn't always be kept in immaculate condition. Even in this small desert outpost, many of the local townsfolk couldn't resist catching a glimpse of a magnificent mechanical wonder as the steam team performs their duties. The dispatcher hasn't lined switches for the special to head west just yet, so the train slowly creeps toward the signal. With a clear block now, 844 digs in and hightails it out of town. We're just east of Vergoza. In the past, the 844's crew has claimed that the 98-foot, 240-ton monster could safely and easily go faster than 100 miles per hour. However, that kind of speed would cause excessive wear, and so the preferred speeds are usually between 50 and 60 miles per hour. That also makes it easier on the accompanying motorcade, where drivers have been known to perform daredevil stunts to get to the head of the chase line. The Salton Sea forms the backdrop as we catch the train near Mortemar. After a meet with an eastbound freight at Mecca, the 844 needs every bit of horsepower to get her train back up to track speed. The Special will stop in Indio for a half an hour of maintenance. Our next location will be a few miles west of town, along the siding at Yuma. Mount San Jacinto looms in the distance. The train will soon begin its ascent of Beaumont Hill. At West Palm Springs, the Special is following a slower-moving stack train. The dispatcher is unable to cross the Special to the other main line due to heavy eastbound traffic, and the result is a string of yellow signals that has the Big Northern down to a crawl for the next 8 miles. The original plan was to have a 10-minute safety inspection of the train at the top of the hill at Apex. Because the train is stuck behind the slow-moving stack train, the inspection will instead take place in the town of Cabazon. This allows the stack train to get further ahead, giving the steam train a few more green signals. We're set up near the signals at Mons. Cabazon is the next set of signals west. The slower-moving double-stack train hasn't quite cleared Cabazon, so the 844's crew is ready to stop if they encounter a red signal. Heads are no doubt turning on parallel Interstate 10, with drivers not believing what they're seeing. Inspection complete. 844 and train come into the town of Banning. We're just west of the city of Beaumont, and the train is now on the west side of Beaumont Hill. Diesel 1996's dynamic brakes will be used for the next 23 miles as the train makes its way down grade. In the background is the 11,000-foot Mount San Gorgonio. As the special approaches Ordway, it once again catches up to that pesky stack train. Pepper Avenue in West Colton is a popular spot for rail fans, and it offers this excellent view of the Centennial Special arriving in the former Southern Pacific Yard. The engineer puts on a good show for the crowds as the 844 comes through on the south side. Watch the 80-inch drivers fighting for traction on the slight grade. As the train enters the yard, railroad employees create their own motorcade. The yard at West Colton extends through 4 different communities. From west to east, the yard starts in Fontana, then slices through the small community of Bloomington. The center portion is in Rialto, and the bridge we're shooting from is in Colton. The Centennial Special will spend the following day on display at the Bloomington end of Colton Yard. The 7 cars that joined the special in Phoenix will be cut off and then head east to Salt Lake City for another event. The display in Bloomington sees modest but steady crowds under cloudy skies that lasted all day. The shortened 8-car special backs up to clear the switch at the Y, which will allow the train to head out onto the Colton-Palmdale cutoff, the first time that a steam locomotive has worked on the cutoff in 22 years. The dispatcher will divert the special onto the parallel BNSF tracks at the Keenbrook crossover, so only 13 miles are traversed on the former Southern Pacific line. But this too is historic, because it's the first time a steam train has utilized the Keenbrook crossover since it was constructed in the mid-1980s as a part of the failed merger attempt of the Santa Fe and the Southern Pacific. Just below Dyke, 844 is making short work of the 2.2% grade. The special charges uphill under a full head of steam. Now on BNSF trackage, we see the 844 as it passes under Highway 138 at Pine Lodge. For 6 decades, starting in 1885, the sounds of steam echoed off these canyon walls daily. After World War II, steam was forced to take a back seat to the diesel. Finally, by the mid-50s, life was just about over for the mighty steam engine. If only for just one morning, we can enjoy the sights and sounds and imagine when trains like this were a daily occurrence on Cajon Pass. Our sturdy camera tripod is proving to be no match for the high winds today. After the special passes Interstate 15, it's a safe bet that a good percentage of those drivers aren't keeping their eyes on the road. A brief inspection stop will be made just east of Summit. Our next shot will be west of Lugo under sunny skies. The train comes up on a yellow signal as it approaches Barstow. At West Daggett, our train will soon diverge back onto home rails for the short run to Yermo, where it will spend the night before continuing on to Las Vegas. A sizable crowd is on hand as fuel and water are topped off. A distant cold front is approaching and will result in mostly cloudy skies for tomorrow's trip into Las Vegas. The auxiliary tender proudly displays Old Glory. The next morning, we catch the train leaving Yermo, right on time. We set up just in time to catch the special as it arrives in the small desert community of Kelso. A stop will be made here to service the locomotive. The dispatcher also informs the steam crew not to be in any real hurry. There's a steep grade in the 19 miles between Kelso and Cima, and this grade can get the upper hand on some of the passing freights. As luck would have it, a freight stalled earlier this morning, tying up the single-track main line. Union Pacific had to dispatch a pair of helper units from Yermo to get the train moving again. Until then, the 844 is stuck here. The restored depot at Kelso is one of the few remaining on the old Los Angeles and Salt Lake route. The power will be uncoupled from the train, so the 844 can be serviced on the other side of the grade crossing. Back in the steam era, Kelso was a bustling railroad town, reaching its peak around World War II. In addition to the many helper crews that were needed to keep trains rolling over Cima Hill, Kaiser Steel worked the nearby Vulcan mine, extracting iron ore for its Fontana mill. The mine workers added to the town's population. After the war, that population began to dwindle. In June 1985, even the Kelso depot was closed, resulting in an uncertain future. Thanks to the diligent work of local preservationists, the depot was fully restored and serves as a tourist attraction. Once again, we see the mud ring being blown down. Notice the sediment pouring from the drain below the cab. With servicing completed, the crew waits patiently for the helpers to pass and get trains rolling again. At 1:15, a full 2 hours behind schedule, the Centennial Special highballs out of Kelso. The 2.2% grade starts here, and the train will need horsepower assistance from the 1996 to make up time. At Dawes, the train ducks into the siding to let a pair of westbounds pass. The second westbound features a pair of SD-70Ms, leading a train of wind turbine blades. It's not every day you'll see a meet between two trains like these. .844 has a green board to proceed and gets underway with a high railer bringing up the rear. At Cima, another westbound meets the 844, and this time the senior locomotive gets to hold the main. We missed the train at Ivanpah, but were able to capture this telephoto shot of the 844 as it streaks across the desert floor. The final service stop of the day is another 20 miles further east, just over the state line at Caleta, Nevada. We finish our show with the train's arrival in Las Vegas. At 4:15, a mere 2.5 hours behind schedule, 844 brings its train into town. Throughout the odyssey of the Centennial Special, an emblem was placed on the front of the 844 promoting the particular state through which the train was traveling. As the train is placed on display on Monday, November 21st, we bid farewell to the 844 and the Centennial Special. The train will continue on to Salt Lake City and Ogden in Utah, and then eastward to Rock Springs, Wyoming before returning home to Cheyenne.